What are the priorities and limits of our mission? A postman delivers the mail to your home. That is his prime function in life. His job description requires him to do that. Now, of course, he may come in and help you fix a blocked drain if he has time, or he may offer to carry out the garbage, or feed the cats while you are away. He may enjoy serving the social needs of the community in lots of little ways, like Postman Pat in the children's books. But that's not what his real job is. And some people may even accuse him of wasting his employer's time on secondary things. He should stick to what he's sent to do and get the job done as quickly and efficiently as possible. So another question arises in relation to the church's mission. What exactly is it? Is there something that is primary that makes everything else secondary, however desirable and helpful those other things may be? Once again, the perceived division between evangelism and social action surfaces. A medical missionary couple I knew had been running a rural hospital in Africa. For years, when they received a communication from their church in Australia that they had been reclassified as secondary missionaries because they were not directly engaged in evangelism and church planting, even though fruitful evangelistic work was actually happening among staff and patients at the hospital. Needless to say, this brought them little encouragement. But was such classification biblically legitimate? In the Church's mission, primarily the delivery of the message of the gospel, in which case the verbal element is all that really matters? Or does the Church's mission include the embodiment of the message in life and action? Sometimes this question is raised as the tension between proclamation and presence, or between words and works. In some of the chapters below, we will explore the integration of what the church is meant to be, as well as what the church is meant to say. The whole gospel. How big is your gospel? The question is clearly linked to those above. What exactly is the gospel that lies at the core of our mission? Is the good news of what God has done through Jesus Christ for the redemption of the world. But what is the scale and scope of God's redemption? The Bible describes God as Redeemer, and very early on. What content does the word hold for those who spoke of God in that way? And what does it then imply for those who are among the redeemed? What kind of experience is redemption, and what kind of life is then expected of the redeemed? This is something we shall explore in chapter 6. One of the dangers with a word like gospel is that we all love it so much rightly and want to share it so passionately rightly again, that we don't take time to explore its full biblical content. Who invented the word, for example? What did Jesus and Paul mean when they used it, particularly since, as I've already said, they had no New Testament to read to tell them? Did they find the gospel in the Old Testament? And if it goes back to the Old Testament, as we will see, then what does that do to our understanding of what the good news actually is? Once again, we will find that the Bible itself will correct our tendency to reduce the gospel to a solution to our individual sin problem and a swipe card for heaven's door, and replace that reductionist impression with a message that has to do with the cosmic reign of God in Christ that will ultimately eradicate evil from God's universe and solve our individual sin problem too, of course. No other name. But at the end of the day, mission is a matter of loyalty. The ambassador must have complete loyalty to the government he or she represents. A trusted messenger will faithfully deliver what his sender said, not his own opinions. So the mission of God's people has to start and finish with commitment to the God whose mission we are called to share. But that in turn depends on knowing our God, knowing God in depth, from experience to his revelation and his salvation. So what exactly is it, then, that we are to know and to remain loyal to? In both Testaments, God's people are called to non-negotiable, uncompromising loyalty to the uniqueness of God, revealed as Yahweh in the Old Testament, and walking among us in the incarnate life of Jesus the Nazareth in the New. The mission of God's people flows from the uniqueness of the God of the Bible, supremely revealed to us in the uniqueness of Christ, that is both the source of our mission, for this is the one who sends us into the world in his name, and also the content of our mission, for all that we say and do is to bear witness to the truth that the Lord is God and there is no other, that Jesus has been given the name that is above all names, and that there is no other name given under heaven by which we must be saved. Acts chapter 4, verse 12. As we turn, then, in part 2 of our journey, through some of the great texts and themes of a biblical theology of the mission of God's people, this is a sampling of the questions and issues we will face. As I've said, we will not necessarily follow the same order as the framework I have just used to survey these questions, for this is biblical, not systematic theology. And my hope is that as we expose ourselves to the rich array of biblical texts from both testaments and spend time in the task of exegesis and exposition, we will find broad answers to those broad questions, or even that some of the questions melt away in the wider perspectives of the Bible itself. Part 2. Arriving at Answers. Chapter 2. People who know the story they are part of. World Mission and the Bible Story. So where shall we start? A great number of books and sermons on the topic of Christian mission start with the Great Commission, the final words of Jesus to his disciples before his ascension, sending them out into the world to make disciples of all nations. It's a natural instinct to start there because it chimes in with so much else that the New Testament has to say about Jesus and his followers, and about Paul and the early Christians. Mission confronts you whichever gospel you read to find Jesus, and it only intensifies after that in Acts and the epistles. Matthew's Jesus instructs his disciples to make disciples and baptize in all the world. Luke's Jesus commissions his followers to go to Jerusalem, Judea, and the ends of the earth. And John's Jesus, as the Father sent me, so I send you. The story of Acts is the story, or rather a story, of early Christian mission. And the letters of Paul confirm that not only he, but a good many other Christians believed in their business to travel around the known world telling people that there was another king, this Jesus. World mission is thus the first and most obvious feature of early Christian praxis. I'm not sure what that word means. And we have to ask why. What was it that made Christianity a missionary faith from the very start. What made the first followers of Jesus so passionately, courageously, and unstoppably committed to telling the world about him? Well, you might respond because Jesus told them to. They had the Great Commission. It was a matter of obedience. And that would be true, given the endings of Matthew, Luke, and John that we have just noted, though we should remember that the Gospels were not written until well after the church's mission had been going for many years. So the written record of Jesus' word was not in their hands, as it were. But if this simple obedience to the Great Commission were the major reason in the consciousness of the early Christians, it is surprising that it is never mentioned anywhere else in the New Testament. Don't misunderstand me here. I am not suggesting for a moment that the Great Commission never happened, only that it is not referred to as an explicit driver for the missionary expansion of the church in the New Testament after Acts chapter 1. Christianity did not spread by magic. It is sometimes suggested that the world was, so to speak, ready for Christianity. Stoicism was too lofty and dry. Popular paganism, metaphysically incredible, and morally bankrupt. Mystery religions dark and forbidding. Judaism law-bound and introverted. And Christianity burst on the scene as the great answer to the questions everyone was asking. There is a grain of truth in this picture, but it hardly does justice to historical reality. Christianity summoned proud pagans to face torture and death out of loyalty to a Jewish villager who had been executed by Rome. Christianity advocated a love which cut across racial boundaries. It sternly forbade sexual immorality, the exposure of children, and a great many other things which the pagan world took for granted. Choosing to become a Christian was not an easy or natural thing for the average pagan. Quote by N.T. Wright.